Business Magazine. Glad you could join us today for the Powering Profits Dealership Roadmap webinar, second in a series sponsored by McGraw Powersports, as you know. Hopefully you've been able to, you're able to check out the first one. We will have a third one in the series coming up here in September, so you can be on the lookout for that. Today's session is once again brought to us by McGraw Powersports. The whole point of their sponsorship is to inform dealers about how to better improve your business performance. They're sponsoring the Powering Profits track at the Powersports Business Institute at AIM Expo. One of the things that they wanted to do is to drive more attendance there this October in Orlando, and we're helping them do that by sponsoring these series, by presenting these series of webinars sponsored by them. So we really appreciate their support. And to get things going today, we're going to have just a quick look at the lineup here of who's going to be speaking. We'll have Tony Altieri from National Powersport Auctions. He's the Director of Business Development for NPA. Previously was the factory and OEM manager, a real familiar face in the industry. And he's going to, I've been skimming through his slides and presentation, and it's going to be stuff that you're not going to want to miss in terms of pre-owned sales and the wholesale state of the industry at the moment. Also, we'll have Mark Mooney. Mark was most recently with Pied Piper, and now he's opened up his own consulting business for dealerships, and that hasn't been very long. And trust me, he is a busy man, and he is out on the road hitting every corner of the country to give dealerships insight on how to better their operations. So Mark Mooney, we're glad to have back as well. Mark Mooney Powersports Consulting is the name of his operations. And first off, we'll have Steve Jones from Gart Sutton Associates. Similar to Mark's a blogger for Powersports Business, and Steve Jones is a columnist that you've read frequently for many years. Steve's the Senior Projects Manager at Gart Sutton Associates. Gart Sutton has been a longtime supporter of Powersports Business and our intelligence properties like the webinar and like our in-person events, such as the Powersports Business Institute. So we're looking forward to having both Steve Jones, Mark Mooney, and the NPA folks also be on hand at AIM Expo in Orlando, and specifically at the Powersports Business Institute. So if you like what you see here today, like what you hear today, make sure you sign up to get down to Orlando to AIM Expo. Their website is aimexpousa.com, and it's real easy for dealers to get registered. But for now, I'd like to turn it over to Kyle Phelps, who is the Director of Marketing with McGraw Powersports, just to give you guys a welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And real quickly, just thank you to Mark, Tony, Jim, and Steve for taking the time today to be presenters on the Powering Profits webinar today, and then also for the other one that we're going to do in September, and then see you guys in October at AIM Expo. You know, as always, and thank you to Powersports Business, of course, for being willing to host this and help us, you know, promote McGraw Powersports, but also our focus on F&I. We've been doing it for 40 years, and it's what we continue to do to try to help you, the dealers, and what you're trying to do within your own businesses. You know, just continuing to focus on growth, focusing on technology, making the job as easy as possible for you guys, and however we can support you and doing things along these lines to help, that's what we're here to do. So, you know, without further ado, enough about McGraw Powersports and about us, and get on with the webinar, and thank you again.
Yeah, that sounds like an excellent plan. These the three presenters we have today do have some important information for you to again, to help out of your business situation. So we're going to start with Steve Jones, again from Gart Sutton Associates, and I'm going to hand this over to Steve. And here in about 2 seconds, Steve, you should be ready to rock and roll.
Okay, thanks, Dave, and thank you, Kyle. Today we're going to talk a little bit about daily life of an effective general manager. I've been chasing a lot of manager information lately and trying to find out what it is that the good managers do right and what makes them exceptional. And there are some characteristics that I run into, as well as some job duties that we've developed over the years. Part of it came from a thing called the Daily Dozen. Some of you may be familiar with that. That came from Assurant. And we're going to pull some pieces out of that, some of the things that a good GM should be doing in every dealership. First thing I want to talk about is attitude. And I ran into this quote by Charles Swindoll. I thought it was very appropriate. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. It's more important than the past, than education, than monies, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It will make or break a company, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it, and so it is with you. We are in charge of our attitudes. If any of you have children, you've probably run into a little conversation with them, as I have with children and grandchildren both, about attitude and the fact that we do have an influence over that. In the case of being a manager of any department, let alone a general manager or a dealer principal, your attitude is really key to how the whole operation functions. It is absolutely essential that you do make the right choice when you get up. And this is something I learned in the early days as a salesperson. I think the saying was leave your attitude at the door, but no matter what is happening in your world, and we all have life circumstances that happen to us, we can't bring those to work. That will absolutely impact everything that everybody else does around you. The staff looks at you to see how their day will go, and who you are that day and the attitude that you bring to work is going to influence their success. You're only as good as your team, so have a positive attitude. It's tough, I know that. We've all been there, but it's a major part of this whole deal. Top 7 daily duties. When I do on-site consulting, one topic that comes up in the employee surveys that we do prior to the visit over and over again is communications. And communications within a dealership really is a fairly easy problem to solve. It goes back to meetings. Where those meetings start are huddles every morning. Department huddles in the case of general manager and department managers, it starts with a manager huddle. A huddle is a real quick stand-up. You don't sit down for a huddle. It's 15 minutes, and it focuses on what happened yesterday, what's happening today, and what's going to take place tomorrow. The next thing a GM does, and sometimes you will find that this sequence may not work for you every day. The essential thing is that these tasks take place. Review the department reports. Hopefully in your dealership, every manager is submitting a report of the prior day's activities to you every day. You review those, the key metrics that are in those reports, whether you use a flash report format or a daily operating control format, doesn't really matter. The essential thing is that there are certain key metrics that the general manager and the dealer principal both want to see on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. What are the sales? What is the gross profit? Maybe what are the expenses for that department? Here are some samples of daily operating controls, the DOC as we call it. One for the service department, one for the sales department, parts and accessories, F&I, and total dealership report, which is prepared by the GM. So he goes through and looks at primarily in this case the gross profit for each of the department areas, and that's the discussion that he has with the general principal, or she has. The next thing is reviewing the marketing plans. Who, what, where, when, how. You know, are there personnel scheduled? Are they the right personnel? Is there funding? Is there equipment necessary? Today's marketing, as most of you know, is non-traditional. In other words, we've gone away from a lot of the typical advertising that we've done in the past, and the focus certainly is on digital media and social media, but it's also on events. As we found out over and over again, the grassroots events marketing system works extremely well for our stores. We don't sell commodities, we sell experiences, and events are a natural way to lead into those experiences. So as a general manager, you want to have a plan, you want to know what's coming up, when it's coming up, and make preparations for it. Be prepared and do it right. The next thing is manager one-on-ones. Those of you who've been to our manager training for the various departments, sales management, service management, whatever, will notice that this is very, very similar to what we propose as effective management in each department. In other words, you have one-on-ones with the people in your department. The general manager has manager one-on-ones. That's where there are discussion of the numbers, where you're reinforcing essential processes and addressing any issues. I had an interesting experience with a general manager not too long ago who was fairly new in the position and came out of the military. And when I covered this part of it, and I said, you know, you have to reinforce the essential processes that must take place in each department on a regular basis, he was kind of taken aback. I mean, he's used to the military structure where you tell somebody to do it and you walk away. As a general manager, you can't do that. If you want the basic processes that make a dealership operate correctly to continue to take place, you have to continually reinforce that with every department. And that manager of that department has to reinforce that with the staff. It's only important to them as long as it's important to the managers. We hear continually in our manager training sessions and our general manager training sessions, we used to do that. Well, this is why it fell apart, because nobody was reinforcing it and monitoring it and making sure that it was taking place. Encourage them, celebrate successes. Nobody enjoys being beaten up every day. If you want them to succeed, if you want your managers to succeed, you have to give them thank yous and congratulations and celebrate their successes in their various departments. Meet with the dealer principal. This is where you're going to have a discussion about those numbers. Uh-oh, what happened here?
What do we got here, Mr.? Oh, there we go.
I've gone black. There we go. Review the status of each department with the dealer principal. Recommend any improvements or changes that you think should take place, and maybe that's come from your one-on-ones with your managers. Waiting for the click to come around. Here we go. Collect information to be disseminated to the departments. The way the communication flow goes, dealer principal gives information to the general manager. The general manager then passes that information along to the department manager, who then disseminates that to the staff in each department. That flow of communication is what keeps the dealership operating at a high level. Walk the floor. You know, we say a good sales manager needs to be on the floor 80% of the time. The general manager needs to get out there on the floor as well. And there are some major things to do. One is stay on top of the daily activities. Observe what's going on, who's doing their job, who's doing it right, what things could be improved. Observe, listen, and note areas for improvement. And then finally, touch base with customers and staff. Be visible and accessible to the employees. Communication has to go both ways. Verify customer satisfaction. Go out there and talk to the customers. Find out what they like about your store. Find out if they have problems with your store. You can't fix it if you don't know it's broken, and this is one of the ways that you find out. Thank them for shopping in your store, always. These are the people that ultimately pay your salary. All right. Well, that's all I've got to say. So there. Thank you for being a part of this webinar. I look forward to seeing you at AIM Expo. And there's my contact information if you want some more feedback on some of the things that we offer. I appreciate your time. Dave, back to you.
Thanks again, Steve. Yeah, we're trying to come up with a good topic for Steve for this webinar, and one of the things that was kind of cool about what Steve has to offer is that was just a sampling of what he's going to present on down at the PSB Institute at AIM Expo. So once again, those will be 32 different class sessions, similar, they'll be about an hour and 15 minutes long each, if you're unfamiliar with it, and it'll be topics real similar to what we're talking about here. This is just a sampling of what Steve will talk about down at his session down in Orlando at AIM Expo. But yeah, that number 7 that he just talked about was kind of hit right at home. We just bought a computer for our daughter who's getting ready to go into her 2nd year of high school. So I'm checking out, and the clerk at the register asked me if I could stick around for about a minute or so, and I didn't know why. And so that was exactly what happened. The general manager of the store came up and just wanted to shake my hand, thank me for making the purchase at their store and not somewhere else. And sure enough, got an email from him because I told him that's the way I like to be contacted best, and got an email from him, within a day or two, thanking me once again. And so it was just a real good experience and just a kind of a personal anecdote of what Steve was talking about on number 7 there in terms of getting to know your customers and if they're satisfied or not. So we will move on to Mark Mooney. Mark has been a staunch supporter of Powersports business for many years. Like I said, he was most recently with Pied Piper and has worked in every facet of a dealership and is going from state to state these days, helping out dealers like yourselves kind of hone in on some areas that they can do better at. So with that, we'll have Mark Mooney from Mark Mooney Powersports Consulting.
How you doing, folks? I want to thank you first for watching. And if there's one thing that everyone is, that we believe in, everybody that's part of this webinar is our sincere want to help you all strengthen your businesses. And what I might be saying today might not be earth-shattering, but I'm not going to say anything that will help. I mean, anything that won't help. Everything that I'm going to talk about can help you strengthen your business. And we're going to look at one thing right now. We're going to look at something that your service advisors might want to do. And this is something I talk to folks when I'm doing dealer visits. And a lot of the things that I talk about, I learned. And I learned when I owned my own dealership because some of these practices I didn't follow. And it's kind of trial by fire. You learn and you start doing. So everything has cause and effect. And I'm wondering how many of you out there right now have service advisors or service managers that call and confirm your clients' appointments a couple of days ahead. And just like we're talking, Dave just mentioned about somebody asking him, how do you want to be contacted? Do you know how your clients want to be contacted? And can you call them and leave them a message, right? And at the same time, are you scheduling the times for those folks to come in? And it doesn't matter. There's a lot of businesses. You want to make sure folks get to you on time. Give them a time to come into the dealership. Control the flow. Dave, How about the next slide?
Certainly.
Dave doesn't trust me changing slides because he's afraid everything will go black if I touch it.
That is untrue for the record.
So one of the reasons it's important to give your clients a check-in time, again, is to manage the flow, because it gives you the opportunity to do a better walk-around with your client. Nobody wants to get called 10 or 15 times because you keep finding little things that if you had the time to do a proper walk-around, you wouldn't have to do that. And it gives you the time to give complete and clear recommendations on what needs to be done. It gives you the opportunity to plant the seeds for upsells, and it also does something else. Before those folks get in there, you have the time to be prepared for them. You got a folk coming in, they're bringing their bike. Maybe you can check to see if their warranty is still in effect. Set yourselves up to be more successful. Next slide, Dave. Consistency. Here's something to think about. We know we're always better if we're consistent in our practices. Advise and guide with a consistent policy that recommends proper service requirements to all folks, to maintain a safe vehicle. Well, let me ask you something. If you haven't given somebody a check-in time so you can manage the flow, how do you have the time to do this? You don't. And something that is important, if you have more than one service advisor, everybody should be saying the same things. Do you know what your service manager is saying to clients? Do you know what your service advisors are saying to clients? You need to have a policy. You need to take the time to sit down with your folks and say, this is what I want you to go over. This is what you're going to say. Yes, we're all different when we start explaining things, but you should have a common language, because you want to be able to do things like this. Dave? Next slide. You want to be able to take the time to offer all the products and all the services to every client every time. You don't want to miss stuff. It's not good for your business, and it's certainly not good for your clients. And one thing that's really important is you don't prejudge what somebody can afford or maybe can't afford or what they need done. Now, to offer all products, you have to do something else that's very important. Next slide, Dave. You need to be able to listen. Ensuring that our customers understand their options means that we got to understand their needs, and listening is part of this. Again, this might seem like such basic stuff, but more often than not, loss of sales and loss of opportunities in our dealerships happen because we're not following certain basic steps on a daily basis. We're not taking care of the opportunities that are being given because we're not watching stuff like this. We're not listening enough. So, next slide. Consistency. Again, you listen, you offer the same things over and over, you have common language, and it should always equal this, consistency again. Now, something, if you have bigger service departments and you have more advisors, if you have less advisors, having the same service advisor from the beginning to the end is a pretty cool thing to do. I know for me, I've had at a car dealership that I've been doing business for close to 30 years, I still have the same advisor. He keeps me apprised on how things are going. And who knows better than the guy that wrote up the work order, the one that recommended certain things to do, and the one that's probably given that work order to a tech. You want the same advisor for proper follow-up. And that's the big thing. It's the follow-up. These guys know. So if that's something you can do in your dealership, I highly recommend it. And if you only have one service advisor, that's what should be happening anyway. Next slide, Dave. So, checkout. Do you all have specific checkout procedures for your clients? Do you take the time to go over everything that was done. It's important. That's how you build trust. This is what we did. This is why we did it. And this is what you're going to need down the road to keep your vehicle serviced properly and safe to ride. Now, here's something that a lot of dealers don't do. They don't schedule their next appointment. Now, if you have somebody that's in your dealership, they just finished their first service as an example, you can ask them, what do you think you're going to be doing mileage-wise during the next few weeks, during the next month, during the next 2 months? We want to schedule your next appointment because we get busy and we want to make sure that we can get your vehicle in and out in a timely manner so you can go enjoy riding. And if you're setting up those service appointments down the road, you're building your business out also. And you can start taking control of your clients, right? You don't want to give them reasons to look elsewhere. And keeping them in your family is the way to do it. And how do you do that? You start figuring out when they should be coming back in to see you. And you can use your CRM as a way of prompting your service advisors to start calling these people, because you want to tell them when they're picking up your bike, hey, we're going to be calling you and checking in to make sure everything's running right. And again, you got to have ways to contact your clients. I make a joke. I can sit there and I can leave phone messages on my kids' cell phones. I won't hear squat. If I send them a text, I hear back right away. So know how to contact your clients and all the ways that they would like to be contacted. Next slide, Dave. You know, and here it is, opportunity. Texted me, tweeted me, linked to me, friended me, tagged me, and spammed me. I was expecting it to knock. You don't want to overwhelm folks with how you're trying to contact them. That's why knowing how they'd like to be contacted is so very, very important. And then, here we go, next slide. Follow up. If there is one thing I see in a lot of dealerships that I visit is poor follow-up. How can you set yourselves apart from the others if you do things the same way? Follow-up is one of the actions that you can put in your dealership, doesn't matter what department it is, to really show that you care and you're above the rest. You're done with the service appointment, customers left, take the time to call them and ask, did we meet your expectations? Did we exceed your expectations? How can we better serve you? And here's something else to think about. If those clients are calling you and they need questions answered, you have to be available, because you don't want something like this next slide happening to your customers. Dave, thank you for calling. Please leave a message. In case I forget to check my messages, please email an audio file. Then send me a Facebook message to remind me to check my email. It goes on and on and on. Return customers' requests of you promptly. It's not a big thing to do, but in the hustle and bustle sometimes we forget that people want to have their needs thought about, and that's what we need to do in our businesses. Next slide. And here we go again. The cycle of excellence begins again, because you're going to start confirming your appointments. Every day you should have appointments to confirm, and every day you should have check-in times to tell these folks, this is when I'd like you to come in at 10:30. You come in at 11. You come in at 11:30, so you have the time to do your job properly. Next slide. Now, your sales department has a lot to do with this. And if you have processes in your dealership that make sure that everything that is done, whether it's a sales department, them bringing customers to you, whether it's a sales department going to the parts department so you can sell more products and get needs met, all your processes in the dealership kind of weave themselves together, because every department in the dealership can strengthen the other if you do it right. But if you're bringing your sales customers into the dealership, remember, you want to start building trust. That gives your service department, your advisors, your managers, to tell them what sets your service department apart from the rest, and it also gives them the opportunity to reinforce the products that the dealership sells. And this can help your F&I department, to tell you the truth. But they can go over, this is what you're going to need to do to keep your bike up. And education helps build customer retention, whether you believe it or not. But you've got to take the time to do this, and you will see the results if you do. So does your sales department now come back, bring every client they have to them so they can go over what you offer? Next slide, Dave. Because what you want to do is be able to say, hey, we have warranty enhancement products, McGraw. We have prepaid maintenance, McGraw. We have tire and wheel. McGraw offers all these products just to let you know if you don't have them in your dealership now. And at the same time, you should be scheduling that customer's first service. On new vehicles, previously owned vehicles, take control. Okay, 600 miles, let's schedule it now. We get busy, we want to get you out at the same time. This is how everything starts, right? You've got to start controlling the service customers in the beginning. Build trust, build rapport by showing them you care. Next slide, Dave. Because it starts here again. Look at this. Follow up again. Here's something a lot of you don't do. New customer, they've been gone 3 or 4 days. Do you call them? You've been introduced to them just to ask them, do they have any questions, technical questions? Because I, as a previous dealer principal, didn't want technical questions being answered by my salesman. It always caused an issue. But if you're bringing them back to the service department and you're showing them the things that they need to do, and your service department is now taking control of that customer, you won't have that. Build those relationships. Service departments will make or break a lot of customers. If you've got a great service department, people stay with you, but they can sure get rid of a lot of clients if you don't watch how they're doing them. Start building the relationships in the beginning, because, Dave, next slide. You don't want to blame a downward trend on your sales because of your customers, because it's never the case. It's always the case that we have caused the issue. That's just it, plain and simple. But you want your customers to feel this. Next slide, Dave. If they call you, how they think about you should always be, for awesome customer service, press 1. For wicked good customer service, press 2. For intense, mind-blowing customer service, press 3. For better customer service than mortal man is equipped to deal with, press 4. You set the bar. You set the bar high, that's what you get. You set the bar low, that's what you get. But in anything that we do, we should always try to do it to the best of our abilities. But we have to drive this as owners. We have to drive this as general managers. We have to drive this as department managers. But again, it always starts at the top. I want to thank you for listening to me. I hope you guys have a great day. I have this in a process. If you'd like, all you have to do is email me and I'll send it to you. If you ever have any questions, you want to just ask something, give me a holler. My contact number is down there, Mooney Powersports Consulting at gmail.com. I'm more than happy to listen and lend a suggestion. Thank you so very much.
Mark Mooney, thank you again, sir. Another outstanding presentation. Again, if when we're looking to put these presentations together, Mark always comes to the forefront just because of his the way he delivers. Like the rest of you, and I think that we can probably sit here and listen to Mark for another half hour or so. Another job well done. Again, if you like what you heard today from Mark, he'll be speaking again at the Powersports Business Institute at AIM Expo in the Powering Profits track, sponsored by McGraw Powersports. So you can make plans to be down in Orlando in October 15 through 19. With that, we're going to move on to Tony Altieri from National Powersport Auctions. Again, Tony is the Director of Business Development at NPA. It's been fun to see him come up through the ranks there for about the past 5-6 years. He was most recently the manager for their factory and OEM business, so he has definitely seen just about every aspect of the remarketing industry that you could come up with. And so I'm going to hand the controls over to Tony, and looks like you should be good to go here momentarily.
Thanks, Dave. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have Jim Woodruff, our CEO, kind of take you through a real brief recap of who NPA is for those that don't know, and kind of discuss our footprint in the marketplace first, and then we'll kind of dive into what we're seeing as far as wholesale trends go. So, Jim, if you wouldn't mind taking over for a second here and giving us some perspective on who NPA is.
Sure, Tony. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. Once again, glad to be part of the session today. We're always happy to share the insights that we have. As most people may know already, and for those who don't know, NPA is the leading wholesale channel for powersports liquidation. So we're blessed to be able to deal with all the major banks, OEMs, dealers throughout the powersports industry. And what we'll be talking about today is gleaned from our decade-plus transaction history. Been doing this for a long time, over 25 years. The current database goes back 12 or 13 years now. So we've got over $5 billion of transactions, almost 1 million vehicles that have been through. But why is that important for today? Well, it's helpful because we have almost a real-time snapshot of what's happening within the wholesale market, which is a reflection of what's happening at retail. So we provide this to our customers and clients through our value guide and other resources that are available to the industry. But we also roll them up, capture them on a monthly and quarterly basis, and then share them with more details with folks at the webinar here about what's actually happening on a seasonal basis, where things trending, where are they going. And so I'm normally the guy that gets to do that, but I'm proud to share in some of those responsibilities here with Tony to help you all make better business decisions. As Dave said, Tony's been with us for quite some time, has a tremendous background in the industry, and he's in a fortunate position of working with our major banks and clients on a daily basis. So with that, Tony, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I want you to share the information with everybody.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, you know, Jim mentioned it, but it's a unique opportunity for us because we have a different perspective than most folks do within the industry. When you look at kind of where we're placed and the different people that we work with, we have views both into the pre-owned and retail market. So, Jim, if you wouldn't mind clicking us over to the next slide here.
I'm trying, Tony.
No worries. There we go.
There we go.
Go ahead and click it one more time for me, Jim. Okay, when we look at kind of the pre-owned market and when we speak with our lenders and our dealers, what we're hearing is that the pre-owned market is on fire right now. I think dealers are seeing more requests from customers. They want to see what's available in pre-owned inventory, and I think lenders are experiencing what they've told us is more credit applications on pre-owned bikes. So what that tells us is retail demand is up from that side. Now, when you look specifically at the average wholesale price, what we've seen in May, which is typically kind of that hinge point in the market as we kind of go into the summer months, is we've seen May's prices kind of drop off a little bit compared to where we were the first 3 months of the year. And that's illustrated into the graph. I think when you look specifically at some different categories, you can see how those price variances swing, you know, from side-by-sides to domestic cruisers. Again, I don't think it's an alarming thing, but it does give us some information about kind of where we sit in the wholesale marketplace. And a lot of our information and the statistics that we've been able to look at tell us that it really isn't any reflection of dealer demand in the marketplace. It has more to do with the type of products that are being sold. And again, as we get farther into the presentation, we kind of go into some different stats and show you some graphs. You'll see how that price to book trend actually illustrates that point a little bit better. Now, when we look specifically at the number of vehicles that are running through our lanes and through our different offerings, you know, the volume is flat compared to where we were in 2014. There's a couple big reasons for that. One is the economy is very strong. Repo default rates still remain to be very low, so people are working, they're making their payments, they're keeping their bikes. The other side of that is another large portion of where we're sourcing inventory comes from dealer consignments. Now, when you're talking about a strong spring market and interest from consumers on a pre-owned level, that means that dealer consigning inventory back into the auction channel is obviously going to decline because guys are moving iron from their dealerships. Again, all great signs for the industry. Again, now when we speak with our dealers about what's happening, what we're seeing is more dealers are becoming active participants. We're seeing that conversion from attendees or looky-loos to guys who are actively participating, bidding, and purchasing inventory through the auction platforms. While our overall attendance mirrors exactly where we were in 14, what we're seeing is more guys are actively participating. So what does this mean? One of the questions that we field all the time in and around kind of how the market is performing is in reference to international participation. And again, some of the things we can't control from a kind of global economic standpoint, right now the US dollar is strong. So compared to other currencies, that's going to keep some of that international participation down. But the biggest factor is a strong domestic retail market is going to basically keep some of those exporters that we may have seen in other times from making any impact on what's happening in the lanes. Jim? Sorry guys, we're experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty here transitioning from slide to slide. There we go. So what we're looking at here is kind of the average performance for our wholesale pricing. Now, if we look specifically at domestic cruisers in the top left portion here, what you can see is we've got four different price points, and again, four different lines. We've got the dotted line, which represents our 5-year average. We've got the purple line, which represents where we were in 2014, and then the red line, which shows kind of where prices have been overall in 15. Now, we've tracked a little bit back of where we were last year, anywhere from 2 to 6 points. And again, this isn't necessarily an indicator that the market is weak or that demand is lessening from dealers. What it is a direct indicator of is the makeup of the inventory that we're offering through the auctions. And again, this can be illustrated if we look at the lower right-hand corner when looking specifically at ATV and side-by-sides. When we see large blips or changes in that prices like we did in March, or I should say April of this year, when we look back and examine the inventory, we can tell, hey, it's a price point thing. And side-by-sides, as you know, can vary pretty widely as far as we have vehicles that are 4 and 6 seaters that can be offered, you know, north of $20,000, and we also have smaller side-by-sides. And again, price point and what we're offering through the lanes are a better indicator of why we're seeing such wide variance between where we were in 14 and where we are in 15. Jim, if you wouldn't go to the next slide for me, please. Sorry about that. One thing that we do want to illustrate, and something that we haven't brought to the table before in kind of previous webinars, is that seasonal price point in comparison to NADA book value. So if you look, when we're talking about, well, how are the vehicles performing over time? ASP is one indicator, but another indicator is looking specifically at the performance compared to NADA book, and this is a better indicator of overall market demand. As you can see, for most categories compared to where we were in 2014, and even compared to the longer 5-year average, we're right in line. Look at domestic cruisers up top here. The trend lines for kind of our NADA performance are exactly where they were last year. So again, I think this echoes and supports some of those same philosophies that we want to drill home, that it has less to do with dealer demand and more to do with a change in product makeup. Again, what we're seeing now through our auction lanes is different than it's been in typical years. And the next graph will illustrate that a little bit more. Now what we're looking at is we want to show you kind of the change in the inventory makeup, where we are now compared to previous years. And again, we made reference to it earlier in the presentation, but what we're seeing is that the average age of vehicles, which is illustrated in the black line in the bottom section of the graph, vehicles are getting older. And again, you would expect over time that that line would kind of smooth out. But what we've seen is its continued decline. And while the change in the overall age hasn't really adjusted that much, it is much older, again, at its oldest point that it's ever been before. The red line up top illustrates kind of where our condition reports and inspections have kind of trended over time. And as you can see, at the current level where we are in Q1 and Q2 of 2015, it's at its lowest point compared to where we were in 2012. Again, what do all these trends mean? I think when we're looking at the different graphs and we kind of dive into the statistics, we'd like to know, what does it tell us? Where are we going? Well, OEMs are reporting nominal new vehicle sales year over year. I think when you look at MIC numbers, new motorcycle sales are up about 8%. ATV sales are up about a percentage point over where we were in 2014. Dealers are reporting increased pre-owned sales, and I think some of that's echoed in the most recent report that was released by Polk in showing that new and used vehicle registrations are almost identical for the first quarter of 2015. Again, I think some of the research that we've done in surveys with our dealers suggest that the price point of pre-owned vehicles provides an opportunity for dealers to make margins. You've got customers walking through your doors asking for pre-owned bikes. While this presents some challenges for premium brands, I also think it illustrates an opportunity for dealers with pre-owned vehicles. So again, when we're talking specifically about dealer inventory, I think some of the challenges that we've seen from the OEM's perspective is a buildup of non-current inventory. Well, the OEMs have gotten really smart and have kind of worked through that. One of the things that we've done is we've actively kind of done a research project where we've looked at and reviewed dealer websites, posting sites like CycleTrader to see, what are dealers advertising? What does their inventory look like? And what we've gleaned from that research is dealers are advertising almost as many pre-owned vehicles as they are new vehicles. So what that tells us is dealers are actively engaged in pre-owned and see an opportunity more now than they ever have before. Now, in looking at that pre-owned inventory, what it tells us is dealers are actually sourcing inventory from multiple channels. When we look at what's purchased through us, what's been offered for sale through us, and compare that with the Polk data and the MIC data, what we find is there's a gap between what we're selling and what dealers have available. So dealers are utilizing their own local markets to source inventory. Dealers are sourcing inventory through trade-ins and finding a lot of opportunity for pre-owned inventory in and around what they've got at their dealerships. As we look further down the line, kind of what's happening from a financing perspective, it's also another good sign for the pre-owned industry. Finance companies, banks, credit unions are increasing pre-owned financing. When you take a look specifically at LTVs, they're at all-time highs. Some of our customers are reporting offering loan-to-value rates as high as 130%. Typically, the average is anywhere from 103 to 109%, but that shows strong support from the financial arm to aid dealers with the demand that they're seeing from retail customers. Our dealers and lenders are both reporting deeper buying in near prime and subprime categories. And again, I think a lot of that has been echoed in what's happened with the partnership between Kawasaki and Westlake, the expansion of Yamaha into offering their own financing, and some other programs that lenders and OEMs have actively gone through to go out and offer financing to near prime and subprime customers. I think people are seeing opportunity at those credit tiers, and they want to take advantage of the fact that there is demand there and give people an opportunity to buy a bike. The other part of it is we've seen increased inquiries for data and information from the auto finance industry. I think that's kind of been echoed even more by the fact that the Auto Finance News is offering, for the first time ever, a Powersports Finance Summit, where basically lenders who are currently in the space and lenders who are looking to actively get into the space can come together and talk about what it looks like. I think one of the challenges that we have from an industry perspective is we have blinders on at certain points in the vehicle life cycle. And I think one of the things that we've tried to do over the last few years is kind of remove those blinders and bring everybody together for the health of the industry. And I think that's been echoed not only in the fact that OEMs are starting to adopt a positive stance on pre-owned vehicles, that dealers are actively engaged in the market, but also that lenders are willing to and looking to expand their pre-owned capabilities. Well, I think that's all we've got on our side. Dave, Jim, you got anything you want to share?
Yeah, I guess one final point to support what you're saying, Tony, is that sometimes we get the question, wow, with all that pre-owned activity, is that eating into new sales? And our perspective is absolutely not. In fact, we believe a strong pre-owned market is required for a healthy new market. There are people that want a certain type of motorcycle or model, and they just can't afford that brand new one. But boy, they can assure that slightly used one or one that's a few years old. And guess what? Some of the OEMs that we work with, the majority of their new bike sales are from prior owners of their brand. So in those cases, it sure is a great way to get them into the brand, to get them introduced, rather than have them go to a different brand or just not become a motorcycle owner. There's tremendous runway for growth in our industry. And in addition, a strong pre-owned market supports the residual values and other things that are important for maintaining the price point of new vehicles, as well as healthy financing. So these things all work together. We actually believe that the signs here are positive for the industry, more so than in the last few years. And we're excited about what all this means and look forward to the growth that's ahead for everybody. Thank you.
Well, awesome. Thanks again, Jim and Tony. I think it's fair to say that Tony's assessment that pre-owned is on fire is 100% accurate. Between myself and my fellow editors at Powersports Business, Liz Keener and Kate Swanson, we're at inside the dealerships and talking to you guys and going to the OEM meetings and product launches, and we continue to hear more and more the OEMs referencing the fact that pre-owned definitely needs to be considered as part of the sales process, and to see that one-to-one sign is for new to pre-owned sales is definitely a testament to that. And again, thanks to the NPA folks for sharing some data that you guys are only going to be getting here on the Powering Profits webinar sponsored by McGraw. That seasonal price to NADA book value chart was super interesting, and is definitely a piece of intelligence that hopefully you can use to gain a leg up on the competition simply from listening in today. So we just had we had one comment related to Mark Mooney's presentation, just regarding reaching the customer. In today's world, everyone texts. I found the best way to confirm an appointment is to send a text reminder with a request from the customer to send back a yes to confirm. It really works great. That's from a fellow dealer of yours listening in today. Just wanted to share that bit of knowledge and information with you. And that's the kind of stuff you're going to get a lot of as we build up to the Powersports Business Institute at AIM Expo. Tony and Jim will be a part of it, as will Mark and Steve. And we'll have several other industry experts, consultants, and just experts in their fields. Again, it'll be 32 sessions down at the Powersports Business Institute at AIM Expo, October 15 and 16 of the dealer days. It's going to be well worth your time if you enjoyed getting some of the knowledge you got here today, and just some short snippets. Again, our sessions are 75 minutes down at the PSB Institute. And again, just want to bring on Kyle to send you guys off on a good note.
Yeah,
Kyle,
thanks, David. And again, thank you to Tony and Jim, Steve, and Mark for presenting that stuff on behalf of McGraw Powersports today, and all that you do to help the dealers and like we said, powering profits. We look forward to seeing you guys on the next webinar in September, and then of course the Powering Profits with the Powersports Business Institute at AIM Expo in October. So without anything else, thank you to everybody.
All right, appreciate it, guys. Hope you have a great day of sales. Thanks.
Thank you.